Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Gentleman Psychic. Thank you for everyone who joined me live yesterday for the Halloween tree. It was really exciting. We had a little bit of a rumble here. You may or may not have noticed it, but we had not an earthquake, but we had a rumbly house. It's been happening more and more frequently over the course of the last, oh, I don't know, goodness, maybe 8 months or better. So things are very strange here sometimes. Things will shake, crystals will shake, the tables will dance. It's really quite an exhilarating ride, that's what I say. Sandy, hello, lovely to see you, my dear friend. So tonight we are going to have the exciting, Ms. Bella, hello. We are going to have the exciting conclusion of The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. Melissa, hello. Uh, yes, The Halloween Tree. It is such a wonderful Halloween tradition. I am told that there is a Hanna-Barbera version, probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 years old. And I don't know how true it is to the book, but you'll have to find that part out, won't you? Hello, I see you, Emily. Lovely to see so many lovely people joining me tonight. We are, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're surviving and thriving. And the big difference is the witch. Oh, the witch is a girl. Yes.
There's a couple lines in there about boys.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Uh, Ms. Bella says hello to Lady Alexandra. Well, anyway, without further ado, my beauties, I so appreciate you joining me tonight. We are more than halfway through the book. So, as you can see from here, we are very near the end, my darling. We are very near the end. Uh, anyway, I guess we'll just go ahead and start. I have nothing else really to add to it, but enjoy. Oh, one thing I do have to add. This is not a place for political discourse. This is a safe place. This is nothing about anything in the news. This is nothing about anything negative. This is a safe space for all of you to come and hear stories, to hear literacy, to hear classic tales of years gone past. So I just realized I didn't turn on that backlight, but that's okay. You can see me, and that's the important thing, I suppose. And I can see to read, and that is even better. Hello, Emily. I'm glad you can watch me live. I hope you were able to go back and watch the first few chapters, but we are going back on 17. So here we go. Chapter 17. Jehoshaphat, said Tom Skeleton, on the parapet. We whistled all the stone griffins and demons here. Now Pipkin's lost again. I was thinking, why can't we whistle him? Moundshroud laughed, so that his cape boomed on the night wind and his dry bones jangled inside his skin. Boys, look round. He's still here. Where? Here, mourned a small, faraway voice. The boys crickled their spines, looking over the parapet, cracked their necks, staring up. Look and find, lads. Hide and seek. And even in seeking, they could not help but enjoy once more the turbulent slates of the cathedral, all fringed with horrors and deliciously ugly with trapped beasts. Where was Pipkin among all of the dark sea creatures, with gills gaped open like mouths for an eternal gasp and sigh? Where, among all those lovely chiseled nightmares, cut from the gallstones of night lurks, and monsters cracked out of old earthquakes, vomited up from mad volcanoes which cooled themselves to frights and deliriums? Here, wailed a far, small, familiar voice again. And way down on the ledge, halfway to the earth, the boys, squinting, thought they saw one small, round, beautiful angel devil face with a familiar eye. a familiar nose, a friendly and familiar mouth. "Pipkin!" Shouting, they ran down stairways, along dark corridors, until they reached a ledge. Far out there on the windy air, above a narrow walkway indeed, was what a small face lovely among so much ugliness. Tom went first, not looking down, spread-eagling himself. Ralph followed. The rest inched along in a line. "Watch out, Tom, don't fall." "I'm not fallen. Here's Pip." And there he was, standing in a line directly under the out-thrust stone mask, the bust, the head of a gargoyle. They looked up at the mighty fine profile, the great nub nose, that unbearded cheek, that fuzzy cap of marbled hair. Pipkin. "Pip, for cry—" "What are you doing here?" called Tom. Pip said nothing. His mouth was cut stone. "Oh, it's a rock," said Ralph. "Just a gargoyle carved here a long time ago. Looks like Pipkin." "No, I heard him call." "But how?" And then the wind gave them the answer. It blew around the high corners of Notre Dame. It fluted in the ears and piped out the gaping mouths of gargoyles. "Ah," whispered Pipkin's voice. The hair stood up on the backs of their necks. "Ooh," murmured the stone mouth. "Listen, there it is," said Ralph excitedly. "Shut up," cried Tom. "Pip, next time the wind blows, tell us how do we help? What got you here? How do we get you down?" Silence. The boys clung to the rock cliff face of the great cathedral. Then another swoop of wind sucked by, drew their breaths, and whistled in carved stone by the boys' teeth. "One," said Pip's voice. "Question," whispered Pip's voice again after a pause. Silence. More wind. "At the boys waited. "Time." "One question at a time," translated Tom. The boys hooted with laughter. That was Pip, all right. Okay, Tom, gathered his spit. "What are you doing up here?" The wind blew sadly, and the voice spoke as from the deep in an old well. "Been so many places in just a few hours." The boys waited, grinding their teeth. "Speak up, Pipkin." The wind came back to warn the open stone mouth, but the wind had died. It began to rain. And this was the best of all, for the raindrops ran cold in Pipkin's stone ears and out along his nose and fountained from his marble mouth, so that he began to utter syllables in liquid tongues with clear, cold rainwater words. "Hey, this is better." He spouted mist, he sprayed quick rain. "You should have been where I've been. Gosh, I was buried for a mummy. I was trapped in a dog. We guessed that was you, Pipkin. And now here," said the rain in the ear, the rain in the nose, the rain in the clear dripping marble mouth. "Gosh golly, funny strange, inside this rock with all these devils and demons for pals. And 10 minutes from now, who knows where I'll be, higher up or buried deep." "Where, Pipkin?" The boys jostled, the rain squalled and beat them so they almost tilted and fell off the ledge. "Are you dead, Pipkin?" "Not yet," said the cold rain in his mouth. "Part of me in a hospital a long way off home. Part of me in that old Egyptian tomb. Part of me in the grass in England. Part of me here. Part of me in a worse place." "Where?" I don't know. I don't... Oh gosh, 1 minute. I'm yelling laughs, and next I'm scared. And now, just this very minute, I guess I know I'm scared. Help me, guys. Help, oh please." The rain poured out his eyes like tears. The boys reached up to touch Pipkin's chin as best they could, but before they could touch, a lightning bolt struck out of the sky. It flashed blue and white. The entire cathedral shook. The boys had to grab demon's horns and angel wings on either side as to not be knocked off. Thunder and smoke, and a great scattering of rock and stone. Pipkin's face was gone, knocked off by the lightning bolt. It fell down to the space to shatter to the ground below. Pipkin! But there below, on the cathedral porch stones, were only flinty fire sparks blowing away, and a fine gargoyle dust, nose, chin, stone lip, hard cheek, bright eye, carved fine ear, all wiped away on the wind in chaff and shrapnel dust. They saw something like a spirit smoke, a bloom of gunpowder blow drifting south and west. Mexico. Moundshroud, one of the few men in all of the world who knew how to utter the word. Mexico? Asked Tom. The last grand travel of this night, said Moundshroud, still savoring the syllables. Whistle, boys, scream like tigers, cry like panthers, shriek like carnivore. Scream, cry, shriek? Reassemble the kite, lads, the kite of autumn. Paste back the fangs and the fiery eyes and the blood talons. Yell the wind to sew it all together and ride us high and long at last. Bray, boys, whimper, trumpet, shout. The boys hesitated. Moundshroud ran along the ledge like someone racketing a picket fence. He knocked each boy with his knee and elbow. The boys fell off, and falling gave each his particular whimper, shriek, or scream. Plummeting down to the cold space, they felt the trail of the murderous peacock flourish beneath, all blood-filled eye. 10,000 burning eyes came up, hovered suddenly around a windy corner of gargoyles. The autumn kite, freshly assembled, broke their fall. They grabbed, they held a rim, two edge, two cross struts, two trap drum, rattling wrap papers to bits and tatters and shreds of old meat broth, lion mouth, and stale blood tiger's maw. Moundshroud leaped up to grab. This time he was the tail. The autumn kite hovered, waiting 8 boys upon its billowing surf of teeth and eyes. Moundshroud turned his ear. Hundreds of miles away, beggars ran down Irish roads, starving, asking for food from door to door. Their cries rose in the night. Fred Fryer in his beggar's costume heard. That way! Let's fly there! No time, listen! Thousands of miles away, there was a faint tap-hammering of death-watch beetles ticking the night. The coffin-makers of Mexico, Moundshroud smiled, in the streets with their long boxes and nails and little hammers tap, tap, tapping. Pipkin, whispered the boys. We hear, said Moundshroud, and to Mexico we go. The autumn kite bounded them away, on a 1,000-foot tidal wave of wind. The gargoyles, fluting in their stone nostrils, gaping their marble lips, used that same wind to wail them farewell. Chapter 18. They hung above Mexico. They hung above an island in that lake in Mexico. They heard dogs barking in the night far below. They saw a few boats on the moonlit lake, moving like water insects. They heard a guitar playing and a man singing in a high, sad voice. A long way off the dark borders of the land in the United States, packs of children, mobs of dogs ran laughing, barking, knocking from door to door, their hands full of sweet bags of treasure, wild with joy on Halloween night. But here, whispered Tom. Hear what? Asked Moundshroud, hovering at his elbow. Oh, why here? And down through all South America, yes, here and south, all the cemeteries, all the graveyards are full of candlelight, Tom thought. 1,000 candles in the cemetery, 100 candles in that graveyard, 10,000 small flickering lights farther on 100 miles, 5,000 miles down at the very tip of Argentina. Is that the way they celebrate El Dia de los Muertos? How's your grade school Spanish, Tom? The Day of the Dead Ones? Caramba, si. Kita disassemble. Swooping down, the kite flew apart for a final time. The boys tumbled on the stony shore of the quiet lake. Mists hung over the waters. Far across the lake, they could see an unlit tomb yard. There were, as yet, no candles burning in it. Out of the mists, a dug-out canoe moved silently without oars, as if the tide touched it across the waters. A tall figure in gray, winding sheet stood motionless in one end of the boat. The boat nudged the grassy shore softly. The boys gasped, for as far as they could tell, only darkness was cupped inside the hood of the shrouded figure. Mr. Moundshroud? They knew it had to be him, but he said nothing. Only the faintest firefly of a grin flickered within the cowl. A bony hand gestured. The boys tumbled into the boat. "Shh," whispered a voice from inside the hood. The figure gestured again, and, touched by a wind, they blew across the dark waters under a night sky filled with a billion never-before-seen fires of the stars. Far off on that dark island, there was a prickle of guitar sound. A single candle was lit in the graveyard. Somewhere, someone blew a musical sound on a flute. Another candle was lit among the tombstones. Someone sang a single word of song. A third candle was touched to life by flaming match. And the faster the boat moved, the more guitar notes sounded, and the more candles were lit high among the mounds on the stony hills. 12, 100, 1,000 candles flared until it looked as if the great Andromeda star cluster had fallen out of the sky and tilted itself to rest here in the middle of an almost midnight Mexico. The boat struck the shore. The boys, surprised, fell out. They spun about, but Moundshroud was gone. Only his winding sheet lay empty in the boat. A guitar called them. A voice sang to them. A road like a river of white stones and white rocks led up through the town that was like a graveyard, to the graveyard that was like a town. For there were no people in the town. The boys reached the low wall of the graveyard, and then the huge lacework iron gates. They took hold of the iron rungs and stared in. "Why," gasped Tom, "I've never seen the like." It feels like that's 2 pages, but it's not. For now they knew why the town was empty, because the graveyard was full. By every grave was a woman kneeling to place gardenias, or azaleas, or marigolds in a frame upon the stone. By every grave knelt a daughter who was lighting a new candle, or lighting a candle that had just blown out. By every grave was a quiet boy with bright brown eyes, and in one hand a small papier-mâché funeral parade glued to a shingle, and in the other hand a papier-mâché skeleton head, which rattled with rice or nuts inside. "Look," whispered Tom. There were hundreds of graves. There were hundreds of women. There were hundreds of daughters. There were hundreds of sons. And hundreds upon thousands of candles. The whole graveyard was one swarm of candle shine, as if a population of fireflies had heard of the grand conglomeration and had flown here to settle in and flame upon the stones and light the brown faces and the dark eyes and the black hair. "Boy," said Tom, half to himself. "At home, we never go to the graveyard, except maybe Memorial Day once a year, and then at high noon, full sun, no fun. This is fun." "Sure," yelled everyone. "Mexican Halloweens are better than ours. For on every grave were plates of cookies shaped like funeral priests or skeletons or ghosts waiting to be nibbled by living people or by ghosts that might come along toward dawn, hungry and forlorn. No one knew. No one said. Did you have a...
Got a hello from the UK.
And each boy inside the graveyard, next to his sister and mother, put down a miniature funeral on the grave, and they could see the tiny candy person inside the tiny wooden coffin, placed before a tiny altar with tiny candles, and around the tiny coffin stood tiny altar boys with peanuts for heads and eyes painted on the peanut shells. And before the altar stood a priest with a corn nut for a head and a walnut for a stomach, and on the altar was a photograph of the person in the coffin, a real person once, remembered now. Better, and still better, whispered Ralph. Huevos, sang a far voice up the hill. Inside the graveyard, voices echoed the song. Leaning against the graveyard walls, some with guitars in their hands and bottles, were men of the village. Huevos de los muertos, sang the faraway voice. Huevos de los muertos, sang the men in the shadows inside the gate. Skulls, translated Tom. The skulls of the dead. Skulls, sweet sugar skulls, sweet candy skulls for skulls of dead ones, sang the voice, coming close now. And down the hill, treading softly in a shadow, came a hunchbacked vendor of skulls. No, not hunched, said Tom half aloud. A whole load of skulls at his back, cried Ralph. Sweet skulls, white, crystal sugar candy skulls, sang the vendor, his face hidden under a vast sombrero, but it was Moundshroud's voice that sweetly piped. And carried from a long bamboo over his shoulder, hung on black threads, were dozens and scores of sugar skulls, as big as their own heads, and each skull was inscribed names. Names, sang the old vendor.